Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. But in this video, I'm not necessarily talking about parenting. Instead, I'm talking about self-government in the classroom. We're going to be talking about teaching self-government in the classroom. This is part 1 of 3. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about self-government, what that means, and then how to set up an environment in your classroom so that your students can be self-governing. So what is self-government? That's important for us to understand if we're going to talk about teaching self-government in the classroom, right? Self-government is a principle, and it's actually one of our principles of freedom. It's also a vital principle for good, effective communication and follow-through. The principle self-government means being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So what that looks like in the classroom is the teacher and the students are all self-governing. That means that they possess a knowledge of their own behaviors and they see cause and effect. And they say, okay, to become the best student in this environment, this is the pathway that I'm going to follow. And if I see myself going off of that pathway, then I will course correct and get myself back on track. The teacher does the same thing. So the teacher says, all right, in this particular setting, this is what it is going to look like to be the best leader or teacher of this group of people. This is my plan because I want this as my end goal, the effect that I want for the classroom environment. As the teacher goes throughout her or his day, then he says, okay, well, this is not working out the way I thought it would, or I'm not able to follow through well with this. What do I need to do to adjust myself to get my desired outcome? Every person in the environment takes responsibility for themselves. They push themselves forward, course correct, and are willing to accept any consequences, whether positive or negative, that they may have earned because of the choices that they planned for their behaviors. So self-government is something that can be utilized in any atmosphere. That's why it's a principle. So principles are broadly applicable. They don't require any excuses or exceptions. They are just ready for us to use at any time. Any group, any office, any home, or any classroom can use the principle of self-government to help all of the people become the best versions of themselves. A number of years ago, back in 2015, our family was asked to go to Kenya to speak to the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops and to train all of their head priests and nuns and people like that who are teaching parenting and helping to influence in their societies. Well, there were some people there who were also teachers within the Catholic Church, and I even think in public settings. So they learned the principles of self-government and were very excited about them. In fact, at first I think they were a little leery because they were ideas coming from the United States. And let's be honest, most of the stuff coming out of the United States right now is actually ruining Africa, not helping. And this wasn't a new way of living Western culture, but instead a foundational way to live their principles and values as well. They got excited. So after a few years of implementing this, I went back to see how everyone was doing. One of the teachers that implemented this in her classroom stood up and said, Nicholeen, I just have to thank you for this. There has been so much war in my classroom. And now, because of the principles of self-government, my classroom does not have war. Think of what that means for classrooms all over the planet. So homes are not having as much war. Classrooms now are not having as much bullying when they are implementing these principles of self-government into their classrooms. When an environment applies the principle of self-government, it leads to more unity and more freedom. So any of my parenting books or resources can be applied to the classroom, even though they are not written specifically for the classroom. There are teachers all over the planet. In fact, there are entire schools, like charter schools and private schools, that are using the principles of self-government to help in their classrooms. So we're going to talk about how to apply self-government principles to the classroom throughout this entire 3-part series, but we're really going to get into the root of why someone would care about applying the principles of self-government in their classroom as a student. But before we do, that button that says subscribe, that is for you. I know there are many people that happen upon this channel and haven't subscribed yet. Click subscribe now so that you can make sure that you don't miss the next tip that will help you improve your self-government. Like I already mentioned, there are 3 parts to this series about teaching self-government in the classroom. The first part, this part, we are going to be talking about establishing the identities within the classroom setting. We're also going to talk about how to help parents integrate into the identities within the classroom, because knowing who you are is vital to success in your own self-government. In the second part of this series, we're going to be talking about improving the communication so that problems can be properly solved together as a group. And then in the third part of this series, we are going to be discussing how to help the children take full ownership over what happens in the classroom setting and outside of it as well. And we're also going to be discussing how to problem solve as a group so that the entire group can have group discussions that will help everybody take more ownership within that classroom setting. So let's talk about establishing identities for our best educational success. So no matter if you are teaching a group of adults or if you are teaching a group of children, it is vital for everybody to understand who they are within the group. The first thing that a child ever learns in a home is, who am I and who are these people to me? I am the child, I am the baby, I am the person who gets taken care of, and that person is the person who takes care of me. This is vital information. It helps everybody know where they stand and where they can feel comfortable. It also gives them a sense of security to know that their problems will be solved. We have to establish always at the very beginning of any classroom setting who you are. And if you're happening upon this in the middle of a school year, no worries, it's never too late to come back to that first discussion that should have happened about who you are. I think a lot of people like to get very much into the exceptions when they talk about who somebody is. Well, somebody is this nationality or this religion or this what. Leave all of that stuff alone. Let's just focus on who you are and how that makes a difference in the relationship that's going to happen in a classroom. So it doesn't matter your nationality, your race, your religion, anything like that when we're talking about who you are within a classroom setting. In a classroom setting, you are a student, or you are a teacher, or you are a peer. Those are the only identities that we need to make sure that we understand within the classroom. So one of the best ways to start a conversation with a group about who you are is to start with the concept of vision. I teach parenting and I talk about creating family visions within families, but there's no reason that that topic should be left exclusively to the family, because every office or organization also needs a vision of where they are headed. What is your vision for this group? Do your students know what you're hoping to accomplish? If not, deliberately articulating that can be very powerful. And do the students have enough buy-in on this vision, or is it all from you? Hopefully they will have some buy-in on what they are hoping to accomplish as an educational group of people as well. So what I like to do is I like to start talking about what they hope the class will be like. Let's just say pie in the sky dream. We're part of this group, this classroom setting. What do you want it to be like? If you want the best experience possible, what do you want it to be like? Someone's always going to say fun. I want it to be fun. But then somebody else is probably going to say, I want to learn new things. I want to leave my time here knowing that I've gained something for putting in all this time. So we have to make sure that we satisfy the fun, but we also satisfy the need for advancement or progress. People want to progress in their learning, otherwise they feel like the entire environment is a waste of time. Also, when we're talking about a group of people that have to see each other every single day, some people may want new friendships. Some people may want to have good communication, good discussion with their peers that are in the group. So talk to them about what it is that they hope to accomplish. If your students are younger, you might have to throw out a few ideas before you solicit from them what they want. Let them think about some of your proposed ideas and then say, yes, that is what I want. They need to have significant buy-in to a picture that is in their minds so that they can see where they are going. That's the beauty of creating a vision. So if I were you, I would set your end point for your vision for the end of that particular class. Whether you have the class for a semester, a couple of weeks, maybe just a few days, or for an entire year or more. Talk about where do we want to be at the end of this class. That's when we know that we have arrived. So that's the end of the vision point. That doesn't mean a person won't make visions for other parts of their academics just generally, but you only have to worry about the part that you are also part of. So we create a class vision or a group vision so that everybody can have a bit of an emotional investment. And for your creative thinkers, it should be a picture that is in their mind. There are some people who have a hard time visualizing something they have not already experienced. They feel like it's a theory, and so they're not sure scientifically if it's really possible. So what you have to do is help them write it out, put enough details in it, maybe even take some steps and say, okay, well, let's look at this scientifically. We can look at it creatively, like this is our creative story of where we're going, but we can also look at it scientifically. If we are going to become that group of people at the end of this semester that gets along well, discusses with each other, respects each other, also respects the teacher and the learning environment so that everyone can learn the things that they need to learn and have a good time, then what should we do first? Maybe first we should try to get to know each other. It's going to be hard to open up to people if we don't get to know each other. So then we start talking about how to make the relationships happen. Some of your more task-oriented or scientifically oriented people will not see, if I want to have conversations with people, I need to go make friends. You're going to have to baby step them through that. Then after they make friends, maybe you do an activity right on the first day to help them get to know each other and make friends. Then you will pre-teach them, hey, throughout this process, we'll divide you up into groups so you get opportunities to work and discuss with other people and to practice some of your respectful listening skills. So you will break them into groups over time and let them know that this is coming, right? This is going to be part of them learning self-mastery because they have to step out of their comfort zone. A person never learns to control themselves or follow through with their goals unless they can learn to take the next steps. Now, I'm not going to tell you every step for your environment because there might be other steps that you know you're going to be bringing into your environment that you can then bring in at that time as you start telling them what the steps are that you're going to go through during the learning process. Years ago, when I wrote this book that I'm most known for called Parenting a House United, I assumed that people understood familial roles. However, I was surprised. People came to me time and time again with their questions that made it very clear that they thought they were on the same page or the same level with their children. And so I had to say, you have a roles issue. You are the leader. The child has to be the follower. You are the teacher. The child is the learner. So I created this book called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. Understanding your role is more than just understanding your responsibility, although it leads you to understanding your responsibility. When you understand your role, that means that you know who you are and how you relate to everyone else in the group. This leads you to then make plans for taking responsibility. We'll talk about how to follow through with those plans for taking responsibility in the next 2 sections of this 3-part training series. But for now, let's just talk about what the roles are. If you are teacher, clearly you have the role of teacher, instructor. You need to provide information, provide a learning environment so that discussion can happen and more information can come out. By the way, just so you know, I've taught many classes over the years for adults and children, and the most powerful learning environment always has been and always will be discussion. So if you are just lecturing all of the time or making the child do independent study, they are missing out on the most powerful learning environment, which is discussion. So teach them how to handle themselves in a discussion when someone is the leader of a discussion. How do they honor the leader but then still take step forward and offer something to the group in the group discussion? They need to know that. So you talk to them about what it means to be a learner, what it means to be a student. A student gathers information, sorts information. They don't necessarily believe all of the information. They just have to take it and decide where to put it, what to do with it. It is the teacher's job to deliver it. How liberating is that, to tell your student, you don't have to believe everything that I tell you. In fact, you should question everything that I tell you. My job is just to tell you information, to try to get it from good sources, but you processing it, that's your role. That's your job. And if you process it differently than somebody else, that doesn't mean you're not learning. In fact, you are learning. You are now doing some very individual learning, individual processing, and that is powerful. I think that's also a piece that's often missed in a lot of learning environments. People want everyone to think exactly like them when they're the teacher, but a good leader, a good teacher does not require that. So talk about what it means to be a student or a learner, make a list of those qualities, and then what does it mean to be a good teacher? And then you might go a step further and say, when we are discussing with each other, what does it mean to be a peer with the other people in this group? And make a list of those things. Have them help you come up with that list so that you can come up with powerful descriptions of who you are. Now, let's move on to the next video, which is part 2 in this series, where we are going to be talking about how to help them properly communicate with each other.